This is a very special day for Fairleigh Dickinson University and the School for the Arts, the ribbon cutting for our animation lab. I'd like to start off by thanking and welcoming the School of the Arts Advisory Board for their leadership and support that they provide. And now it's my great privilege to introduce President of Fairleigh Dickinson University, Christopher Capuano.
Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for turning out. I want to share with you some of my thoughts about the School of the Arts, and then also the donor that made the animation lab, which is why we're here specifically today to do the ribbon cutting on. And then, obviously, I want to thank a number of individuals who were instrumental in making this lab possible. So let me give you a little background concerning our strategic plan, which essentially has two phases, the first of which is now complete. In fact, we sent a report around last week highlighting many of the achievements during the past 5 years. Almost two of which, unfortunately, were marred by the pandemic, and it was increasingly more difficult to move a number of initiatives forward. But nonetheless, we did succeed in doing a lot of things. One of which is completing this lab. And I know Dr. Wyman is here. I think he's seated back there, and we celebrated his career at FDU yesterday. I know many of you were there, and he and I are very close, and we've had an interesting relationship over the years, part of which he was pushing me, and part of which I seem to be pushing him. So the School of the Arts was one of those things that I was in a position to push him on. When we first wrote the strategic plan, and I'll admit I was the primary architect of that plan when I was provost, and we were talking a lot about establishing centers of excellence academically at the university and professional schools and all of this. And we wrote in the School of the Arts, but at that point it was not for Jeff, but for the rest of us, it was just an idea, really just an idea at that time. And I thought about how many times I had gone to Jeff over the years and asked him to do something that he didn't think was a priority. And he said, well, if it's that important, then make it happen. So that's essentially what I said to Jeff about the School of the Arts. He wanted it to be more prominent in the plan. And I said, well, it can be as prominent as you want it to be. Make it happen. And he's as persistent as I am. And he made it happen. From the early beginning. And I have to tell you, of all the professional schools that we've established, each of which are doing well, I would have to say now, admit that Jeff was pretty successful in working with Howard and Todd and many of you, and really bringing this to fruition, in a way that I think has probably demonstrated more success than just about any of the other schools, except perhaps the School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, but it's even close. So Jeff took this from an idea, and I mean an idea, and look what's come of it. And kudos, Jeff, to you and knowing who to reach out to, because it's always about building a team. No one person can do it alone, and I think Jeff will be the first to say, I helped make it happen, but I didn't do a lot of the heavy lifting. Many others did. So I think that's important. Equally important is a very important person now to all of us, in Chris Dorfler, who unfortunately could not be with us today. I did actually speak to her recently, and she asked me to tell all of you. She really wanted to be here, but she had a personal matter that came up recently that she could not get out of, could not change. So that's why she's not here, but she wanted me to tell you that she loves FDU. I knew that already. And she loves the School of the Arts even more than she loves FDU, and I think many of you know that already. So her footprint is on many things here at the university. This is just one of many already, and she's not done, I can tell you. In fact, I'm going to be having dinner with her maybe next week, if not the week after, to talk about some other things. But I want to remind everyone that Chris is not technically a graduate of the university. Her late husband was. Ronald J. Dorfler was on our board of trustees, and he passed away very unexpectedly and tragically, probably 5 to 7 years ago now. And since then, Ron had a lot of plans, for FDU, and Chris has, I think, accelerated many of them and actually has taken them to another level, frankly. So we have many things to be thankful for. Chris is actually an honorary alumna now of the university. I don't have to tell anybody here she has a passion for the arts like no one else, and she is your champion. She is completely dedicated to this school and making things happen. She was, I believe, the founding chair of the advisory board for some time. She started a scholarship in Ron's name, which I think is funding students that are studying in the MFA in creative writing. People forget that our relatively new user maker space in the Moniger Center bears Ron's name. That's a Dorfler Center there. So they provided a gift to make that happen. She also had a hand in helping to fund the dance floor within the Ferguson Center, which is being used by the School of the Arts. And she single-handedly entirely funded the renovation of this animation lab. So, Chris has done remarkable things, and we owe her a huge debt of gratitude. I've now gotten more close to her, not because of funding only, but because of the relationship that I had developed with her husband, that I felt it was important to continue with her, just as I've done the same with Linda Namoli, who was very generous in giving us additional funding to support our new baseball field on this campus. And, their husbands' legacies are actually now their legacy. So I think that's important when we think about our family. It doesn't end when somebody that's close to the university, is no longer with us. So I think it's my obligation, certainly, and many others to make sure that we continue these things to the extent possible. So, the pandemic has really slowed us down a little bit. I like to say a little bit. If you look around, you see evidence of the fact that despite all the challenges, we've faced and overcome in the last 18 months, we're moving forward. So we have 2 incredibly beautiful fields now at the front gate of our campus, which are, turning heads like you can't imagine. I've gotten so many calls from people wondering what's going on at Fairleigh, just based on what they see when they drive by the campus. They notice, that there are things happening here. So on this campus in particular, I'm sure all of you have seen those fields. We have the new animation lab, which I haven't seen in person yet, so I'm very excited to see it. I've seen pictures, and the pictures have been quite impressive. And there have been many other accomplishments, but I also want you to know that one of the priorities we placed a great deal of emphasis on in the strategic plan was improving our standing, our ranking in U.S. News and World Report. And I think the progress we've made there has been nothing short of incredible, almost unbelievable, frankly. And when we hired Luke Schulteis, who's our VP for enrollment planning and effectiveness, I had already done the calculation, and I said, Luke, if we can work on retention and we can improve our 6-year graduation rates, get those rates in particular to 60%, we can be a top 50 university, regional university in the North. And in a very short period of time, we've done it. Last year, we were ranked 50th. This year, we're ranked 44th. And I think those are good numbers when you consider the fact that in 2016, when I became president, we were ranked 83rd. So to think we've gone from 83 to 44, almost 100% improvement, in that period of time is really remarkable. And that speaks a lot to the university that we are, and even more so aspire to become, and the emphasis on excellence. And certainly the School of the Arts is symbolic of that as well. We need to be mindful that in addition to folks like Chris, individuals like Chris, we have many alumni now that are really stepping up and seeing what we're doing here and offering their support, to us, financially and otherwise. So we're seeing fundraising like we've never seen before at this institution. We started a campaign a few years ago before the pandemic, which was initially a $50 million campaign, but before we went public, we already had commitments in excess of 50, so we increased it because of our 75th anniversary to $75 million. We have since increased it to $125 million, and I think we'll announce soon that we want it to go yet to $150 million. So that wouldn't happen if we didn't have very generous alumni and friends who are seeing the value in what we're doing here and saying, hey, that's my school, I want to help. And we have many people who have graduated from this institution that are doing very well financially, but have been waiting for us to make the move, that we're making now, and they're there. They're there, and they're going to support us. So be mindful of that. Chris is just one example of those individuals. I also want to thank, in concluding, I know a lot of people had a hand in making this happen, the animation lab, and I want to recognize them. I don't know that they're all here today, but Daniel Topping and Elizabeth Burke, are you here? Okay, thank you. So if you don't know, they were the architects. They designed this magnificent facility, and I think we're, Todd, arranging tours, right? So that we don't have too many people in there at once. So if you haven't seen it, I hope to be on the first tour. Please make the point of seeing it. Is Dick here? Dick Frick? Dick is in the back there. Dick is our Vice President for Facilities and Auxiliary Services, and Dick, projects like these are always overseen by Dick, not only the design but the construction phase. So Dick, thanks for your due diligence in getting this set up and for the execution on it. I saw Neil. Neil is here. Neil Sturm is our Chief Information Officer, Vice President for Information Technology. Neil obviously oversaw not only the acquisition, but the installation of all the technology that's in this new lab. And I heard it's quite impressive, the technology. So we'll take a look, Neil. I'll be there to see what it looks like very, very shortly. Howard, I know, Howard Liebov and Todd, please stand because you're the leadership behind this whole thing. And there may be members of the School of the Arts Advisory Board that are present. Please applaud yourselves. And I know there are faculty, students, and alumni that had a hand in this as well, especially the faculty that are teaching and advising students in animation and game design. So with that, I'm going to conclude my remarks. I want to congratulate Jeff. Wonderful job. If you ever need a job one day, come see me because we need more people like you. I know you're deserving of retirement, but you may get a call one day, so be ready. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the day.
Hello, everybody. I am Robin Barkley, the director of the animation program here at Fairleigh Dickinson. And now that I have you all here in one room, I would like to share with you a little bit about this project. 2 years ago, I was asked to submit a list of our program's needs to Dean Weinman. Some weeks went by when the dean's office called me to tell me he would be coming by with someone named Chris Doffler to discuss the needs of our lab. When they arrived, Dean Weinman introduced us, and Chris then turned to me and said, "Please show me around and talk to me about what you need." After discussing so many things, she looked down at the document in her hand and said, "Everything that we discussed is not on this list. You need to update it to contain everything that is needed. So as we got facilities and the IT department involved, the list grew. Dick Frick from Facilities Department explained that there were things we didn't even see that needed addressing. You know, I was thinking of how pretty it was going to look, but who knew? So I told Dean Weinman that I was worried it might become too expensive and then we wouldn't get anything at all. He replied to me, "You just assemble the list. It is my job to do the worrying. Let me do that part." Next, it was suggested that we bring an architect firm to help design and lay out the room at the time. And at that time, Heidi Fitchenbaum, is Heidi here? I hope I'm saying that correctly. Heidi Fitchenbaum from Facilities began guiding us through the architectural phases. The architects went to work designing various layout ideas and went back to the drawing board on multiple occasions to come up with the best possible use of the space. One of our struggles was trying to squeeze a few more feet from the work lab next door to house a small 3D printing booth, knowing that we still needed to keep that work lab in operation. So at that time, the head of IT, Neil Sturm, said maybe we can move this lab elsewhere and we can take down the wall between the rooms so that we can accommodate all of what is needed. At every stage, I was in awe of how much everyone cared about this project. After many rounds of revisions, redos, and research, on the day of our final presentation to Chris, the architects gave a fabulous presentation of our vision, and then she said to me, "Tell me why this project will benefit your program." I responded, it is so that our students can have a state-of-the-art inspirational environment in which to learn and work in. I am so proud of them, I always have been. And with that, she smiled and said, "Thank you." I can't tell you how touched I am by the support and enthusiasm that everyone had brought to the table on this project. From the support of our School of the Art director, Todd Rosen, to our chairman, Howard Lebov, who attended every meeting involving the project, to our amazing faculty who always had encouraging things to say, to Neil Sturm's IT department, where Matt Google, Lisa Stadler, and Ralph Knapp worked diligently to make sure we had the best equipment and technology, to the facilities department, who followed the construction through from beginning to end and even kept it moving forward through the very challenging year of COVID, to Dean Weinman, who initiated and facilitated the process. But most of all, my thanks go out to Chris Dorfler, who without her selfless generosity, we would not have been able to accomplish any of this. Since its inception, I have received emails from students and alumni expressing their amazement and excitement about the new animation lab. These emails are not only meant for me. I am just the person that they know. But their words of appreciation are really meant for all of you. I realize that she is not here today, but I especially want Chris Dorfler to know that this all comes full circle back to her. She lit the flame that started a fire under all of us. What she created here is not just a pretty room behind glass. It is truly a heartwarming human experience where everyone who touched the project came with the desire of making sure the room became the best animation lab possible. I witnessed words and actions from a group of people who worked so positively together, focused on one amazing common goal. What she has given us has truly touched my heart, and it will touch our students for many years to come. And now I am pleased to introduce one of Fairleigh Dickinson's most distinguished alumni, Gary Kitchen, who graduated with his BS degree in 1980. Gary was one of the true pioneers and visionaries of the video game industry. His 2600 adaptation of the hit Nintendo arcade game, Donkey Kong, sold over 4 million units. In 1983, Gary followed up the success of Donkey Kong with his title, Keystone Capers, a nominee for Video Game of the Year. When the video game industry suffered a slump in the mid-1980s, Gary focused his efforts on creativity software. His first title, The Designer's Pencil, was hailed as groundbreaking by reviewers and paved the way for Gary's most ambitious title, Gary Kitchen's Game Maker. Game Maker, for which Gary was named Video Game Designer of the Year, is a suite of 5 professional quality design tools connected to an easy-to-use programming language, allowing novice designers to create commercial quality video games. In his present role as president and CEO of SGK Service, Inc., Gary is a sought-after expert witness in legal matters concerning video game and mobile app design and development, patent and copyright infringement, and general software development. He has employed many artists and animators, including myself at times, over the years. We are very proud to claim Gary as an FDU alum, and we are thrilled that he is here to help us dedicate this wonderful facility.
Hello. As Robin said, my name's Gary Kitchen, 1980 graduate of Bachelor of Engineering in Electrical Engineering from the Teaneck Hackensack campus. I had the honor number of times over the past 20 or 25 years of employing Robin, and I can't think of anyone better to be working with the students at the animation lab. She is truly tremendous at her art. I thought I would give a little background, giving my perspective from the game industry, and explain to you the importance of this lab in the future of FDU students. And believe me, I am enormously excited for the leg up they get by having such an amazing lab. And I am deeply thankful to Chris Dorfler for the generous donation she made to make this possible. So I have had a long and fruitful career in video games, thanks first of all to my education at FDU, and to a little bit of good luck and some good timing, as I hope everyone gets. It's truly a job that I would be doing even if I wasn't paid to do it, and I think I'm very fortunate for that. I grew up about 3 miles from the Teaneck Hackensack campus, so I think geographically I was destined to go there anyway, and ended up doing so. As a kid, I had always had a passion for art. That was really what I did, and it's what I thought I would do in a career. I remember sitting with my dad when I was very young, watching Learn to Draw by John Nagy, a television show, and we would sit in the living room and he would teach me how to sketch. And that really consumed me through my high school and into college years as something I became good at and something I thought I would pursue as a career. Therefore, when I entered Fairleigh Dickinson in 1974 fall, I entered under liberal arts, thinking that I would eventually go into art or illustration. Back to the timing, in 1975, with a little bit of luck and right timing, I ended up getting a part-time job with a very small company that did electronics work. I had no background in electronics, but I was paying my own way to Fairleigh, and like any other student, I could use a little extra money. So I took a job in Glen Rock, New Jersey, which isn't far from Hackensack, Teaneck, and I was essentially low man on the totem pole. My most important responsibilities were keeping Coke in the fridge and making sure there was an adequate supply of M&Ms for the engineers. It was a small company. There was only 4 people, but they were brilliant. I didn't know when I joined, but I found out soon after. It was a great time for me to think about electronics because in the 1970s, the country was benefiting from the bazillions of dollars that were spent in the 60s with NASA landing someone on the moon. That enormous R&D effort had pushed electronics tremendously, especially semiconductor chips, which are the brains behind everything we enjoy today in terms of consumer electronic products. What came out of the 1960s were incredible computers on a chip, no bigger than your fingernail. And they were enormously expensive when they went on the Apollo. But by the early 1970s, they started to become at a cost that made sense to put them in consumer products. So that formative period in the 1970s was an amazing time for me to get involved in electronics. I didn't know it at the time. I was clueless, but I was very fortunate. When I joined that team of people, they were at the forefront of the early microprocessor, a chip that cost $7 or $8 to make. You hear today about your Pentium computers being 64-bit. The processors of the mid-1970s were 4-bit. They were very rudimentary, but at the time they were magic. I immediately got thrown into the fire. It was a small company. These guys were brilliant, and they were also tremendously good at over-promising deliveries to clients. So when it was time for something to be done, they didn't mind grabbing the gopher guy from the back and throwing him into the fire too. So I quickly learned initially things like building circuits and soldering and designing circuit boards, but very quickly, as I learned on the job, I started to learn things like electronic design and programming. Somewhere in the same time period, two things became clear to me. Number one, I couldn't take 18 credits a semester and do this part-time job, which was becoming more than a part-time job. And I was in the wrong major. So I went to the FDU guidance counselors and told them I wanted to switch from liberal arts to electrical engineering, and you should have been there. They tried to explain to me that that doesn't happen very often, and was I sure I wanted to do that? And I did. Now, what's interesting is what I had found was the entertainment aspect of electronics, especially in video games, brought my art side, while the technical aspects, which I learned from this job, combined with that, really I had found a passion where I could both do what I was good at in electronics and software and also still enjoy my artistic background. So there were few jobs at the time that could do that, but certainly I ended up stumbling into one. When I initially went to that company, we were doing clocks and calculators and things, but two big things happened in the mid-70s, which led to my career and led to the animation lab. First, electronic toys were invented. 1977, Mattel came out with a toy called the electronic football game. And it was a little handheld device with a 9-volt battery. And unbeknownst to people, all you were doing was using the same little red segment that was on your calculator. You used a group of segments to make the number 8. Well, those little segments, you were running down a field to avoid tacklers. And I took one look at that and said, well, I know what I want to do for a living. I'm going to make toys and games, because that was much cooler than calculators, even though calculators were great. So I started working on toys. The first product I ever made that was a toy or a game used the 4-bit microprocessor, and it used LEDs, the same little LEDs that you use to light up the 8 on the calculator, but it used 76 of those LEDs in a grid which made up the board of a virtual billiard machine, billiard table. The toy I created lit the balls in sequential order to make them look like they were rolling. And I wrote software in the 4-bit microprocessor to take into account things like friction and aim and angles and reflection off the side to simulate the game of billiards. That game was marketed by Parker Brothers in 1980 and was a huge hit and was named one of the 10 best toys of the year. And I was still a student at FDU. I was a senior at that point. I had a leg up on the other students because I was learning on the job, but I certainly do not discount the value that my engineering courses gave me toward that sort of success. Now, what's interesting is those 76 LEDs were pixels. Pixels are a term you use today, but back then they were pixels. I only had 76 of them, and I did what I could with 76 pixels, and it worked. Your phone today has about 3 to 4 million pixels on it. So when you look at anything on your phone graphically, it really is the same code that I wrote in 1979, 1980 for the billiards. It's just happening with a lot more pixels, and they're multicolor, which is even better. So I did a little more work in toys, and then in 1977, this storm from the West Coast came. I was still on the East Coast at this point, and it was from a company called Atari, who had created a game system, the Atari 2600, which could actually let people play games on a TV set in color. Now, I would have never thought that people would prefer graphics on a TV set in color over my 76 LEDs, but who would have known? Anyway, that was the beginning of video games as a real big consumer product, now bigger than movies and music combined in terms of revenue. Who knew? But it eventually got to the animation lab, and I'll give you a quick run through of how it did. I had started with pixels. When I started doing games on the Atari, Robin mentioned Donkey Kong. I did the home version of Donkey Kong on the Atari in 1982. When I had to make Little Mario run, I had 8 pixels across and about 18 pixels tall. And I drew him in there. And the same way that Disney does individual animation frames in their early movies, I did a number of frames of him running, leg up, leg back, leg down. And I used my rudimentary art skills to do that. And I made him run. And that was one step beyond the little red pixels of my billiard game. But it got us in the direction of starting to make more sophisticated animation. I did a number of games in the 1980s that used that type of animation, and that was common in the game industry through the Nintendo NES and the Super NES, the Sega Genesis. These were all platforms that used that type of animation. But in the mid-90s, 3D graphics made their presence apparent in the game industry with the release of the Sega Dreamcast, the Sony PlayStation, and the Nintendo N64. When I was in school, when I started, 3D meant nothing to anyone, 3D graphics, and we're not talking about the glasses. We're talking about 3D glasses, meaning 3D graphics, meaning dimensional imagery. It had been in the academics since the 1970s. People a lot smarter than me had been trying to figure out how do you mathematically model a 3D object and then put it on a screen where it can be viewed from any viewpoint and look real. And that took many, many years and work at University of Utah and New Jersey Institute of Technology and other places to really take it from the lab in the college to industry. And it got into the industry in about the mid-90s. Now, I'll give you a sense of what 3D graphics are and why this animation lab is so important. 2D is very simple. As I said, you have like a postage stamp. I draw an image on it, and to make a character move, I show a series of those images. Simple. 3D, you actually have to define an object you have to think dimensionally. You have to define every vertice that makes up that object and every surface that is surrounded by the lines that connect the vertices. Now, if you think about a cube, simple six-sided cube, it has 8 vertices and it has 6 sides. Now, a computer has to take that and figure out if I'm looking at it from here or over here or down here, what is it going to look like on the screen? And that's called projection. How is that 3D mathematical model of an object projected onto an image? And that involves some serious mathematics. And if you think about it with a cube, imagine that these people that Robin teaches and that Robin masterfully does have to do the same analysis of vertices and surfaces when they want to put a dragon in a game or Yoda in a Star Wars game. The amount of vertices and surfaces in the games of today are in the millions. And the chips, microprocessors once again, but a special type of microprocessor called a graphics processor, is now able to do all the mathematics for the projections, meaning calculating the position of all of the dots, calculating all of the surfaces, rendering the surfaces in perspective, calculating light so that they can render shadows, making sure that objects that are behind other objects are no longer visible. All of these pieces go into GPU chips, and GPU chips display the type of things that Robin and her students make at 60 frames per second, processing millions of vertices every 60th of a second. It's truly miraculous technology. And it is probably the most high-tech thing that people deal with on a day-to-day basis, and they don't know it. They walk by a video game, they think, well, isn't that nice? It's got nice graphics, it looks neat. What's going on in that machine to do that is miraculous, honestly. So think about what these people have to learn from Robin. It's a combination of art, architectural skills to build a 3D model, and computer skills, because the tools that Robin and her team use are incredibly complex. These are not, I've been in the industry 45 years. I can't sit down at one of the tools she uses and easily build a 3D model. It's incredibly hard. So in closing, I really respect anyone who goes into 3D animation. It is incredibly hard. It requires a lot of diverse skills. And it's close to my heart because in a lot of ways, it's a combination of my early love for art and then my subsequent learning of engineering and being able to combine them in something that is commercially valuable and hopefully brings great success. So it's really my hope that the students who are fortunate enough to use the lab find their same level of passion and success in combining all of those skills as I did when I combined my FDU degree with my ability to draw and paint and ended up in the one industry that combines them both. So thank you very much, and thanks again to Chris Dorfler for paying for that lab. I'm sure it's going to go to great use. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. That was fascinating and very interesting, and we're so grateful that you came here all the way from California to be with us today. Now is the portion of the event where I would call up typically Chris Dorfler so she could receive an award, but I will unveil the award, and I will tell you that this special gift was created by our 3D printers in the lab, so you'll see what kind of work we can do, and now comes the unveiling.